LFC. Welcome to week 2 of our life group study through the book of Psalms as we consider God's songs, a semester in the Psalms. As a kid, some of my favorite songs were songs that told a story. I was a kid who, I just loved stories. Kind of was a place to escape. It allowed me to use my imagination, and so I loved just to sit and listen to stories, whether it was on the television or through song, or maybe even just sitting and having a book read to me. And when we come to the book of Psalms, we can read through it in our day and think that they're just kind of randomly put there and they didn't really have an order to them, or maybe we think, well, they're just put in order that they were written from the earliest to the latest. But in reality, those who put the Bible together, the Jewish texts, they put the Psalms together very purposefully. In fact, they put them in an order to tell a story. They're telling God's story. It's really a way to help God's people immerse themselves in God's story. And so when you're reading through it, you'll see little markers or headings in the book of Psalms that say book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. And it's important to know that book 1 and 2, it's telling the story of David and his kingdom through his lineage. It's a very complex story, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And you'll notice that through books 1 and 2 of Psalms. There's a lot of exciting psalms filled with praise and worship, and then there's a lot of songs crying out for deliverance. Then book 3, it takes a deep dive into Israel's experience in exile, when they have disobeyed God and God has kicked them out of the land, the promised land, and now they're in exile in Babylon, and they're crying out again to God in repentance and asking God to forgive them and restore them. And books 4 and 5 points to the future of when God's Messiah, the coming King, would restore Israel to its past glory and bring more glory that they've never seen before. And so it's a way for the people in exile who were feeling hopeless, when they read the book of Psalms, they would be reminded of what God has done, what God is doing, and what God is promised to do in the future. And so when you read through the book of Psalms, tonight we're going to start with Psalms 1 and 2, both fairly short Psalms, not very long, that you can read through really quickly. But I want you to know that Psalms 1 and 2 really serve as a bookend for the book of Psalms. And really, they kind of serve pointing to the beginning of the Bible in Psalm 1, and Psalm 2 points to the ending of the Bible. Psalm 1 paints this picture of a garden where there's a tree, and he's settled and planted by streams of living water, and there's a choice in this garden to either walk in wisdom and to walk in blessing, or to walk in the path of the wicked. And then in Psalm 2, we see that the nations are now raging. It's no longer in a garden, but there's nations raging, and they want to put to death God's promised king. And the author says, why would you do that? Turn now, for the king's wrath is easily put away, and serve this one true good king. So this Psalm 1 points back to the garden. Psalm 2 points ahead to the future kingdom. And we immerse ourselves. These aren't just songs that make us feel good. These are songs that teach us the truth. And so I hope that through this semester you'll be reminded of God's story, what God is doing in all of history, and what story God is writing for you now. I hope you enjoy tonight's study, and we'll see you next time.